All right, as we move into section 14.3, we take a look here at behavioral approaches. Do leaders show distinctive patterns of leadership? So in this section here, we're going to take a look at task-oriented leader behaviors. The focus of task-oriented leadership: here's what we do to get the job done. Relationship-oriented leader behavior: the focus of relationship-oriented leadership. The concerns and needs of my employees are highly important. And then last but not least, we focus on, so what do we know about the behavioral approaches? So situational approaches: does leadership vary with the situation? So we have the contingency model, which is Fiedler's approach to leadership and behavior situations. So effective leadership behavior depends on the situation at hand. Say believers in two contingency approaches. So we have Fiedler's contingency leadership model and then House's path goal leadership model. So these are kind of the two main ideas that we're going to focus on. So the situational or contingency approach to leadership. So who believe that effective leadership behavior depends on the situation at hand. So here's the contingency leadership model. So this would be Fiedler's approach. So two leadership orientations: tasks versus relationships, three dimensions of situational control, and then which style is most effective. So the contingency model determines if a leader style is one, task-oriented, or two, relationship-oriented, and whether that style is effective for the situation at hand. So leadership orientations: task versus relationships. There are two leadership styles in Fiedler's model. Two leadership styles in Fiedler's contingency model, again, are the task-oriented and the relationship-oriented. The three dimensions of situational control: once a leader identifies their leadership style, they should next evaluate the context to determine their level of situational control and how much control and influence they have in their immediate work environment. There are three dimensions of situational control: leader-member relations, task structure, and position power. So when we talk about leader-member relations, do my subordinates accept me as the leader? This dimension, the most important component of the situational control, reflects the extent to which a leader has or doesn't have the support, loyalty, and trust of the working group. So this one, right from the outset, super important. Do your subordinates, do your employees accept you as the leader in terms of best direction for the company, caring about them, right? So do they have your support? And you need to have that support in order to be the most effective manager. Obviously, you don't want active dissension from your subordinates. Then task structure: do my subordinates perform unambiguous, easily understood tasks? So this dimension refers to the extent to which tasks are routine, unambiguous, and easily understood. The more structured the jobs, the more influence a leader has. And then we have position power. Do I have the power to reward and punish? So these represent the three dimensions of situational control that we take a look at when we talk about Fiedler's contingency model approach. So which style is most effective? Neither leadership style is effective all the time. Fiedler's research concludes rather it is best suited for certain situations. And I think you guys probably have seen this and understand this from a rational perspective of understanding that different situations call for different leadership styles. There's there's no one size fits all, this is going to work every single time style of leadership. As a leader, you really have to be able to meet the moment, understand the backstory and the situation behind whatever it might be your employee's going through. Let's say your employee's going through a tough personal time, and you as kind of a dominant task oriented person is harping them about making sure they get X, Y, and Z done, when really they're going through a tough time, and maybe adding that sort of disciplinarian style of leadership isn't maybe necessarily going to get done, get them back to performing as an employee or up to the standard that you need to employ or need them to perform at, right? So, having, addressing different situations with tact, addressing situations, with different styles of leadership, different orientations can really help you as a manager, one, understand your people, two, get the most out of those people, with whatever situation that they may be facing. So, every style has its place, and it's, again, a tough job of a leader, of a manager, to understand, when that situation is going to arise and which style, which orientation to lead with. Fiedler's contingency model. So here, and as I kind of just told you, kind of difficult to know when to use these individual orientations. This table here, the Fiedler's contingency model on Figure 14.1. This is on page. Do a little bit of searching here for you on the book. Page 614 in your book, you'll see Fiedler's contingency model, and it kind of talks about the optimal leadership styles for situational awareness when it comes to just what the situation is in terms of what needs to get done, where you're at. Path goal approach, leadership model. So House's approach: what determines leadership effectiveness? Employee characteristics and environmental factors affect leader behavior. So what does a path goal practice look like? So in path goal leadership, the path goal leadership model, which holds that the effective leader makes available to followers desirable rewards in the workplace and increases their motivation by clarifying the paths or behaviors that will help them achieve those goals and providing them support. So what determines leadership effectiveness? Employee characteristics and environmental factors affect leader behaviors. Employee characteristics. 5 employee characteristics are locus of control, which we talked about in Chapter 11, task ability, the need for achievement, experience, and then the need for path goal clarity. Environmental factors. There are 2 environmental factors: task structure, independent versus interdependent tasks, and work group dynamics. What does path goal theory look like in practice? So employees with an internal locus of control are more likely to prefer achievement-oriented leadership or group-oriented decision-making leadership because they believe they have the control over the work environment. The same is true for employees with high task ability and experience. Employees with an external locus of control, however, tend to view the environment as uncontrollable, so they prefer the structure be provided by supportive or path goal clarifying leadership. The same is probably true of inexperienced employees. And then on page 615 in your book, you can see here the House's revised path goal theory. So leadership behaviors. So you talk about path goal clarifying, achievement-oriented, work facilitative, supportive, interaction facilitation, group-oriented decision-making, representation and networking, and value-based. So those are the leader behaviors, and then those are influenced by 2 contingency factors of the employee characteristics and the environmental factors. So in the middle there, you see the influences of employee characteristics, so the locus of control, task ability, need for achievement, experience, need for path goal clarity, and then the environmental factors, so the task structure, the work dynamic groups, and then in determining, so 2 and 3 influence in determining 4 the most effective path. So leadership effectiveness, employee motivation, satisfaction, performance, leadership acceptance, interaction facilitation, and then work unit performance. So you can kind of see here the path goal theory, the revised location of it as we look here. And again, that's on page 615 within your textbook. So what do we know about the situational approaches? So use more than one leadership style. Kind of talked about that, how different situations, when different situations arise, it calls for leaders to kind of meet the moment and be able to adjust their leadership style. Help employees achieve their goals, and then alter your leadership behavior for each situation. Provide what people and teams need to succeed. So again, use more than one. Effective leaders possess and use more than one leadership style. Thus, you are encouraged to study the 8 styles offered in path goal theory so that you can try new leader behaviors when the situation calls. Help employees achieve their goals. Leaders should guide and coach employees in achieving their goals by clarifying the path and removing obstacles to accomplishing them. Effective coaching was found to increase employees' performance. Alter your leadership behavior for each situation. A small set of employee characteristics, ability, experience, and need for independence and environmental factors. So, task characteristics of autonomy, variety, and significance are relevant contingency factors, and managers should modify their leadership style to fit them. Career readiness competencies of emotional and social intelligence are helpful tools for this. Then we should also provide what people and teams need to succeed. So view your role as providing others with whatever they need to achieve their goals. For some, it could be encouragement. For others, it could be direction and coaching. All right, now we transition into 14.5. So starting this on page 619, the full range model. So using transactional and transformational leadership. So transactional and transformational leadership, we'll take a look at that. The best leaders are both transactional and transformational. We'll talk about 4 key behaviors of transformational leaders, and then we'll talk about what do we know about transformational leadership. So it's kind of the big picture idea here in section 14.5. So transactional leadership. So transactional leadership focuses on clarifying employees' roles and task requirements and providing rewards and punishments contingent on performance. And then transformational leadership, this leadership transforms employees to pursue organizational goals over self-interest. So transformational leadership is influenced by 2 factors. One, the individual characteristics. So the personalities of such leaders tend to be more extroverted, agreeable, proactive, and openness to change than their non-transformational counterparts. So female leaders tend to use transformational leadership more than male leaders do. Organizational culture is another factor that plays in. So adaptive, flexible organizational cultures are more likely than rigid bureaucratic cultures to foster transformational leadership. So again, transformational leadership, I don't want to sit here and say, one is better than the other, but transformational leadership, is a little bit more, I think it's a little bit more genuine in terms of how those leaders are able to connect with others in terms of, actually getting them to follow them. Or transactional leadership, it's kind of right in the name where it's like, hey, if you do these tasks, you're going to be rewarded with, X, Y, and Z. Or if you don't do these tasks, you're going to be punished with A, B, and C, right? So it's a little bit more genuine when it comes, to the 2 different styles of leadership when it's transactional versus transformational. The best leaders, though, however, are both transactional and transformational. So you definitely do need the 2 in terms of, got to have a little bit of both. Again, we've kind of hit this theory and idea of meeting the moment and figuring out, what situation, situationally, what style do you need to use, right? And there's, definitely a time where, the money's on the table and you need transactional leadership to, accomplish something. So transactional leadership is an essential prerequisite to effective leadership, and the best leaders learn to display both transactional and transformational leadership styles. Transformational leadership helps superior performance when it adds to transactional leadership. 4 key behaviors in transformational leaders. So 1, inspirational motivation. So let me share a vision that transcends us all. So with this one, having charisma is huge. And charisma, for those of you who don't know, it's a form of interpersonal attraction that inspires acceptance and support. At one time, charismatic leadership which was assumed to be an individual, inspirational, and motivational characteristic of particular leaders. Then we got to communicate a vision. So a transformational leader inspires motivation by offering an agenda, a grand design, and an ultimate goal. In short, a vision, a realistic, credible, attractive future for the organization. Then we have an idealized influence. So we are doing the right thing. So express integrity by being consistent, single-minded, and persistent in pursuit of their goal. Display high ethical standards and act as models of desirable values, and then make sacrifices for the greater good. So that's the second 4 key behavior. 3, individualized consideration. So you have the opportunity here to grow and excel. So transformational leaders don't just express concern for subordinates' well-being, they actively encourage them to grow and excel by giving them challenging work, more responsibility, empowerment, and one-to-one mentoring. And then 4, intellectual stimulation. Let me describe the great challenges we can conquer together. Transformational leaders are gifted at communicating the organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats so that subordinates may develop a new sense of purpose. Employees become less apt to view problems as insurmountable or that's quote unquote not my department. Instead, they learn to view them as personal challenges and they are responsible for overcoming, to question the status quo, and to seek creative solutions. So, what do we know about transformational leadership? It can be used to train employees at any level. So, not just top managers, but employees at any level can be trained to be more transformational. It is best to couple this training with developmental coaching and job challenges. You can prepare and practice being transformational. The simplest way to practice is to write down ideas for exhibiting the 4 key behaviors of transformational leadership: inspirational motivation, idealized influence, individualized consideration, and intellectual stimulation. The next time you attend a team meeting at work or school, it should be used for ethical reasons. So while ethical transformational leaders enable employees to enhance their self-concepts, unethical ones select or produce obedient, dependent, and compliant followers. Without honesty and trust, even transformational leaders lose credibility, not only with employees, but also with investors, customers, and the public. Then we take a look at contemporary perspectives and concepts. So leader-member exchange leadership, so having different relations with different subordinates. Servant leadership, and then the power of humility. So we take a look at that as we transition here into 14.6. So this is kind of the big picture ideas as we kind of take a look at these contemporary, these current perspectives, concepts of management. So our contemporary perspectives and concepts. So empowering leadership, ethical leadership, the followers, what do they want and how can they help? Then we'll take a look at abusive supervision as well. So leader-member exchange leadership, making different relations with different subordinates. So leader-member exchange, also known as LMX model of leadership, emphasizes that leaders have different sorts of relationships with different subordinates. In-group exchange versus out-group exchange, and then is the LMX model useful? So looking at the top, so LMX focuses on relational quality in leader-follower dyad. So unlike other models we've described, which focus on behaviors or traits of leaders or followers, MLX model looks at the quality of relationships between the managers and subordinates. LMX assumes that leaders have distinct relationships within each individual. And you guys have probably seen, this leader-member exchange model of leadership, all over the place, especially in schools, right? I mean, I think it's, goes without saying, some teachers get along better with students versus, other teachers, right? Some teachers just, from a personality standpoint, mix and match well with a certain group of kids. It's one of those things where, obviously as teachers, we, love all of our students equally. We want all of them to succeed. And, at the end of the day, we're going to give give every, boy and girl, and, we're going to give them our best, but you also have to recognize that, some teachers get along with other students better. I don't think that's groundbreaking news to any of you listening to this. Sometimes it's just, just as simple as, this teacher shares more in common with that student. They maybe are kind of cut from the same cloth in terms of their interests, and that sort of, that makes it kind of easier to resonate with them. So I don't think this is exactly, controversial or groundbreaking. We don't use that to influence what grade they're going to get in the class. But, I think it's just one of those things where you guys have probably seen this sort of LMX model of leadership being emphasized in the classrooms. Servant leadership. So servant leadership, I want to serve others and the organization, not myself. So servant leadership focuses on providing increased service to others, meeting the goals of both followers and the organization rather than yourself. Then we take a look at table 14.6. This is on page 626 in your book. So these are 10 characteristics of being servant leaders. So you guys can read those 10 characteristics. Take a look at the table there on page 626 when you're studying the chapter. Some good information there and some good perspectives and characteristics on kind of what it takes to be a servant leader. Then the power of humility. And humility is the relatively stable trait grounded in the belief that something greater than the self exists. So humble leaders tend to display 5 key qualities that employees value. So high self-awareness, openness to feedback, appreciation of others, low self-focus, appreciation of the greater good. Empowering leadership. I want my employees to feel they have control over their work. Empowering leadership represents the extent to which a leader creates perceptions of psychological empowerment in others. The psychological empowerment in employees' beliefs that they have the control over their work. Then we have ethical leadership. So ethical leadership, I'm ready to do the right thing. So ethical leadership includes communicating ethical values to others, rewarding ethical behavior, and treating followers with care and concern. So here's what research tells us about ethical leadership. Ethical leadership is clearly driven by personal factors related to our beliefs and values. It also has a reciprocal relationship with an organization's culture and climate. In other words, an ethical culture and climate promote ethical leadership, and ethical leadership in turn promotes an ethical culture and climate. Such leadership is positively related to employees' job satisfactions, organizational commitment, organizational citizenship behavior, motivation, and task performance. It is also negatively associated with job stress, counterproductive work behavior, and intentions to quit. Followers. So what do they want and how can they help? So what do followers want in their leaders? So significance. So such leaders make the followers feel that their work is important and meaningful. They want community. These leaders create a sense of unity that encourages followers to treat others with respect and to work together in pursuit of organizational goals. And then excitement. The leaders make people feel energetic and engaged at work. What do leaders want in their followers? So followers vary, of course, in their compliance with a leader, with helpers most compliant showing deference to their leaders, independence, less compliant, distracting themselves, and then rebels, the least compliant, showing divergent from their employers. Then we have abusive supervision. So what causes supervisors to be abusive? What do we know about abusive supervision? How does that affect employees? So what causes supervisors to be abusive? So organizational culture, probably the leading cause. So factors in the supervisor's environment may make abuse supervision more likely. These factors include aggressive organizational norms and abusive role models. Individual differences. So research has found significant correlations between supervisors, individual differences, and the propensity of behavior abusively towards subordinates. And then early life experiences. So supervisors' early life experiences impact the likelihood that they will abuse subordinates. So what do we know about abusive supervision? How that affects employees? So abusive supervision increases negative outcomes. They're more likely to engage in deviant and counterproductive behavior at work and more likely to experience depression and emotional exhaustion. Abusive supervision decreases positive outcomes. So subordinates, experience decreased job satisfaction, job performance, are less likely to engage in organizational citizenship behaviors. And then what should organizationals do to deal with and prevent abusive supervision? So implement strong, clear policies about supervisory behavior, provide training to supervisors and employees on appropriate behaviors and how to recognize abuse supervisory behaviors, establish fair procedures for dealing with complaints about abusive supervision, including safe reporting channels and protections from retaliation for employees, and then use regular employee attitude surveys to help uncover unreported cases of abuse supervision and potential patterns of abuse. All right, that there is going to take us to the end of chapter 14. All right, so quiz this Friday as we begin getting geared up here towards the last couple of chapters, and then ultimately with our final exam. So at whatever time you're listening to this, whether it be morning, noon, or night, have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you back here for chapter 15.